Hello and welcome to the Reddit League show, Season 6, Week 1, Finland. And today I am joined by Diesel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And we'll get right into it in Finland. As we did last time, we'll start out with Reddit League next. And you might now look at this sheet and think, okay, those numbers are quite low, but it was a really tough seed, wasn't it, Diesel?
Yeah, I think it was the hardest of all, actually. And then, because it's next, you have players who are maybe not that practiced, but at the same time they can only play 3 minutes, and that's how you get low numbers like that. But I think even players from the first and second division who played the same seed didn't do all that well.
Yeah, absolutely. When I played the seed, when I created it, the funny story about that was I created a seed first and got a 25k in like 9 minutes, but that put me up on the high scores. And I'd always rather, not use those seeds because people could just look at the actual locations from that seed. I mean, they shouldn't, obviously, because it's obviously cheating, but, I threw that
Oh,
seed
okay.
out and created a new one. And that new seed, I did not find information earlier than about 20 seconds to the end in any of the 5 rounds. So I got about 12k on that seed. Possibly also walked in the wrong direction a couple of times. But yeah, that just goes to show how difficult that seed was. So a great performance from G Papa, who comes in first and already has kind of a little bit of a lead there. But also Sekateur, Bombadil, pretty good scores all around there. The two poles in Wavy Blade and Gum Smile, also pretty good. But yeah, nothing lost yet. Just 1 week gone. Plenty of weeks left to go. So yeah, let's take a look at Division 5B, our first of the regular divisions, and how they did in Finland. And those scores quite a bit higher, also 4 minutes and 20 for those players. But generally, pretty good weeks, I'd say, for the players who are well familiar with Reddit League. You got the 25k from Danny Blondes, almost 25k from Anonono, and some of the lower scores from the newcomers, but some of those also with some decent scores. Mr. Swiss Snow at 24k as well. What do you think about this, Diesel?
Yeah, I agree. It was a much easier seed. It was very much concentrated around Helsinki, I think, right?
Yep.
I think four of the rounds were all pretty close to the capital. And the fifth one was also quite urban. So, yeah, I think for that reason, we have much better scores. Yeah, I think, as you said, the very good performances by, let's say, Danny Blance, Mr. Swiss Snow, Arnaud, and all of these players are no big surprises, I think, right? I think they are all among the favorites for promotion this time.
Yeah, as we said in the preview show, Mr. Swiss Snow was looking to qualify for an even higher division until he did very badly in Pennsylvania. So definitely out of
Okay.
the newcomers, one of the favorites. And yeah, Danny Blondes, we've kind of been looking for him to promote for like 3 seasons now. Maybe this is finally his season now.
Yeah.
Very close game as well between Tripliha and Cephalin, just eight 92 points between the two of them, just about in the draw range there for the two of them. And yeah, Polena and Lolette with the two lowest scores, but because they're playing against each other, that's a nice 3 points for Polena anyway. So let's look at the table and see how that is shaping up. Just the first match day, so no big surprises here. Danny Blondes with the extra point for the perfect score, and Cephalin and Trebly have both picking up 2 points for their draw, with Lagege picking up an extra point for at least being in the top 50%. So yeah, you already mentioned a couple of names that you think are favorites for the promotion fight. What do you think about the other side of the table? Do you see any players who you'd think are going to have a tough time fighting against relegation?
Yeah, so there are some players that I don't really know all that much about. For example, yeah, for example, Cookers, I haven't seen him that much, and some others. I, but it's early on, and I think I always kind of think that for players who are new to the Reddit League, there can be very steep learning curve in a way, right?
Mm,
They start in the first couple of weeks and don't do so well, and then they realize, oh, they kind of have to practice very much for that country, and when they start doing that, they might start doing better afterwards. So, for Lulette and Corgi as well, who both didn't do all that well, that could be the case.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's something I like to mention quite often with newcomers. It's hard to tell. Some get in there and are straight up to speed, practicing a lot, getting good performances, and some just, I mean, if you're just playing on your own all the time, you probably don't play country maps that often, or if you do, mostly like your home country, or maybe you practice a couple if you like playing duels, like Russia, Indonesia, some of those more important ones. But a lot
Yeah.
of players just aren't really used to that type of competition. So when they come in, they, as you said, might take a little bit of time to get used to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's look at who they're going to be playing against next week. And yeah, some interesting matchups there. Probably Corgi against Lolette is already an interesting matchup in that relegation fight. They're both still on 0 points. So that's also kind of just mentally an important thing to get off the mark, just to get at least 1 point going, then you're already in a better position. And yeah, I also think Lagege against Mr. Swiss Snow, two newcomers there, is also a very interesting matchup. Anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, so, well, I think that Penguin against Danny Blondes is also an interesting matchup to see whether Danny continues with his strong start. And then, yeah, Lagege and Swiss Snow are both strong players. And it will be, that will be also an important pointer, I think, towards who takes it serious and who basically has a chance at promotion.
Yeah, they might be good candidates. Maybe not for that first or second place, but sneaking into that third and that promotion playoff place. Two people there that you might want to look at for that spot. So, division.
Also true for Arnaud, I think.
Yeah, for sure. He might even be one with his Finland performance. Maybe all three of them, to be honest, might be even fighting for that second spot. Assuming that Danny Blondes is going to finish first. He still has to do it first, but, he is the favorite now.
No.
Yeah. All right. And also for the first time, Division 5 with 11 weeks. So even longer than usually. That might be good or might be bad. Just, depends. But definitely plenty of time to, get those points. All right.
Yeah.
The other half of Division 5 and their results shows Jack very, very close to that 25k, just dropping 4 points. A little bit unfortunate, always, if you just about miss out on that bonus point. And Mr. Fish with a great score there, winning out in the Swiss Derby, even though Clemu also got a pretty good score.
Clemu also played well.
Yeah, will definitely grab a bonus point.
Disappointing to lose despite having one of the best scores, of course, but yeah, that happens.
Yeah, great debut as well for Greasy Church Killer with, again, a score over 24k against Upfolkseed, who, not a bad debut score, although I think, let me just check. Yeah, just on the edge. I think he needed one more place in that sense to get a bonus point, so unfortunately he's still on 0 after week 1. Other than that, Hordy in the sort of Reddit League next from last season player derby against Strassel will take his first 3 points. So that's a nice start for him as well. And yeah, good start again as well for Biquet. Anything to add?
No, not very much, except that, yeah, I'm surprised to see some players who I didn't really knew very much about before, Mr. Fish and Greasy Church Killer, doing so well in general. Jack ES, I think I was expecting him to do well because I've seen him around over the summer quite a bit and all of the other Reddit challenges and all that. So
yeah, definitely. So let's have a look at that table. And Mr. Fish actually isn't a newcomer to Reddit League. He's been here 2 seasons ago and got relegated. So definitely good for him to start off on the right foot this time. I've already said in the previous show as well how he's looked a lot better in preseason than he did back when he first appeared in Reddit League. Maybe back then he was just, relatively new to the game, and in the meantime has played a lot and, well, as it looks, gotten a lot better. So yeah, nicely going for him. But yeah, as always, just the first weekday, so nothing too exciting there looking at the table. Two players from the American continent on the bottom, two Spaniards right next to each other. It's nicely lined up, but other than that, nothing too interesting. So let's quickly move on.
A lot of geographic diversity in this league.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Very interesting in that regard. Probably the one with the most, if I'm looking through here. I think Division 4B also has quite a bit, but yeah, probably the division with the most different, maybe not nationalities, because we do have two Swiss and two Spaniards, but most spread out maybe. So yeah, let's look at who they're playing next week. And yeah, some interesting matchups. I think a lot with players of relatively similar quality. I think Clemu against Jack could be a very interesting matchup. Jack with his almost perfect score last week, and Clemu also with a great performance. But I think Bhutan will sort of be our first real challenge generally, because, I mean, even if you haven't practiced Finland much, or, if you go into Reddit League thinking, I don't have to practice, you're probably not going to do too badly in it, because, well, there isn't too much to practice, and you're probably going to find some signs anyway. But Bhutan, you're going to be suffering if you're not going to be practicing. So we'll really see, what or how much effort these people are willing to put in to get some good results here.
Yeah, exactly. It's a kind of map where you get a lot out of playing it a lot, and then actually, knowing even what the landscape looks like in the east and the south relative to the north, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk more about Bhutan later. Any of these matchups look interesting to you?
Other than, so I agree that Clemu versus Jack Jack ES is a very interesting one early on. Mr. Fish and Picotaste both played well in Finland, right? Or relatively well in.
They both won their
so
game at
that
least.
will be exactly. It'll be interesting to see if they continue with their good start. I want to see more from Damir as well, or Digmir, who I think lost his first or their first matchup, but could also do better over the course of the season, I think.
Yeah, he's looked pretty decent last season. I think he missed one game week and still ended up in 4th place in Division 5B last season. So definitely someone who could perform well and maybe fight for a 2nd or 3rd place in this division. But he'll have to improve a bit on that Finland score. Yeah, you're right on that. All right, then let's move over to Division 4. And Division 4B provided us with these results on an interesting seed. One round not quite like the others, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I have heard some complaints around, about round 3 of the 4th division seed, definitely. Yeah, so 4 of the rounds were relatively easy to get, and I think most of those players got them, and then the last one was mainly, or the third of the 5 rounds was mainly a guessing round, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there wasn't much information anywhere close by. I've talked to Pluki, who got the best score on that seed, who said that if you just went one direction the whole time, you would eventually end up finding some good signs, like relatively close to the end of your time. But so I think it was just him and Seppo who got pretty good scores in that round.
Close,
yeah, and
exactly.
Solar Sensei making a relatively good, like, just landscape guess of sorts. But unfortunately, even with the 2nd best score, I think the 3rd best score of the seed, if you include all the players that played it, still,
Fluky, right?
Yeah, still ends up losing his game against Seppo, which is very unfortunate. but that's just how it is sometimes. And yeah, great start for
Yeah.
Seppo. I said in the previous show how I was interested to see how he'd be doing in this division now that he's, for the first time in I think 3 or 4 seasons, not fighting against relegation. Seems to be doing quite well so far. And
Yeah,
yeah, apart from that,
exactly.
yeah, relatively close games.
I think other than that, none of the results are especially surprising, right? I think there's no real upset among
Hmm.
any of the other games. And yeah, of course, that round 3 played a role in some of the results, but I don't think that most of them were actually decided by that round.
Yeah, I think if you were looking at who would be the favorite in these matchups going into it, without any of the scores, probably maybe Mikpiet Perstetli would have been like a 50-50 matchup. Could have gone either way, but other than that, I do think that mostly the favorites have won. And like it is in the case for example, Dromi and Jern Harrison, you can also see that it wasn't just that one round. They also did drop quite a few more points in some other
Exactly, that's what I
places.
meant. Yeah.
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 And
I think most of these matches would have basically gone the same way if it was round-wise scoring, for example, right?
yeah.
So
Or if round 3 was replaced by a round in the center of Helsinki, for example, that everyone would have
yes,
gotten.
exactly.
All
Yes,
right.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's take a look at how that now is in the table. And yeah, again, week 1, nothing too exciting. Solar Sense and Mikpiet both picking up a bonus point in their losses. Yeah, but other than that, I think probably we are looking at the top 6 here are who I would expect to be fighting for the promotion spots.
And maybe McPete as well, right?
Yeah,
So
you can probably include him in there too. Just depends a bit on how he's feeling on some of the countries, how much practice he's putting in. But yeah, definitely I'd include him in there as well. Yeah, you're right. And that just means tough times for the 3 at the bottom there. If we're not including them in a promotion fight, there's not really much else left there. I do think that, it's totally possible that one of the people we just included in that fight might also have a terrible season and drop down and leave some room for one of the other 3. And maybe they just, saw, okay, first week didn't go very well, so let's put in more effort. But yeah, for Jean Harrison with his first game here in Finland, it might be a rough season for him. Both Division 4s only have one newcomer each, which is, well, it creates a difficult situation for them against players who have quite a lot of experience in Reddit League. I think most of these people, I mean, Seppo was here from season 1, Pastetli was here from season 2, I think, 2 or 3. Jake's been here for ages, so a lot of
season 2, I
experience.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, for the most part, a relatively even division anyways, right? I think a lot of the players are quite good. And it's just the first day, so I think we will be surprised with some people.
Yeah, definitely. I think this and the other Division 4 is also very even, so some exciting matchups for sure to be had there. So let's see if we get any exciting matchups this week. And looking at it, there are some interesting matchups there. I think probably the most interesting is Sheldon against Ollie. Both won their first game. Both pretty strong players. I think had also very, very similar performances in that Finland game, I guess. Solar Sensei Mikpiet could also be a very interesting game, purely based on, Mikpiet not picking up a win in his first game. So that game against Solar Sensei, who also, as we said, unfortunate to not pick up a win, but didn't pick up a win nonetheless. So kind of disappointing starts, I suppose, for both of them. And this next game could really, either turn their morale around or give them another kick while they're down. Yeah, anything you'd like to say?
No, I agree that that first matchup between Solar and McPete is interesting because I think both are relatively strong players who will try to bounce back. And then, yeah, I think Pastetli is favorite against Romy. and I think Jake is also favored against Laban. Uh, yeah, and then Zeppo is favored against Jeune, I think. But at the same time, it's Bhutan, and if you don't, just guess wrong on one location where other people get some landscape clue or something like that, then you can lose your matchup very easily, nevertheless. So,
Yeah, and especially for the Seppo against Son match, I kind of have Seppo in my mind as the type of player who do very well on the easier maps, but might be struggling a lot on maps that have little information and kind of rely on stuff like landscape guessing or just
yeah,
stuff like that, practice as well. So might with the score from Sean Harrison in Finland might still go in his favor, but that's kind of the one chance that Sean Harrison has to maybe go for an upset there.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then Division 4A's results kind of even more clearly show that the type of seed with pretty much like, I think that's 6 players just above that 20k mark.
Exactly.
Which probably the most unfortunate there is Carp, who ended up losing his game by 250 points, which, isn't the biggest loss in the world, and then lost out on a bonus point by 6 points, coming in 6th out of that division. So just very unfortunate start there for him, which kind of just continues his end of the season last season, where he had a brilliant start and then just kind of tapered off towards the end. And yeah, unlucky for him. He was probably, I guess, the one with the worst guess in that round 3. I looked at his guess.
He went all the way north, right?
He went very, very far north, which in that's probably one of the rare scenarios where you can say that was just a bad guess. Ends up very unlucky, of course, and if he had more information, he could have maybe done more with it. But purely like there isn't much landscape guessing you can do in Finland, but the very far north does look slightly different from most of the rest of the country. But yeah, if you're in a stressful situation, you probably, in that kind of situation, in that kind of round, you are just like moving forward until like 10-15 seconds at the end, just to try and find some information. And it's totally reasonable that you're not thinking about landscape guessing in those last 10 seconds that you might have left over. Just I
think he moved his marker in the last 10 seconds too. I think I saw his video.
Yeah, never a good idea.
Just stressing and moving around a lot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, interesting game because I think both of them are favorites for promotion, or among the favorites for promotion, right?
Yeah,
in a division with a lot of very strong players, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
I was about to
really
say,
knows?
Yeah, there's a lot of favorites for promotion in this division.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all kind of, most of them starting off pretty well there. We already said Hexal with his win, Lunacy with a win, Xander with a win there as well. Yeah, Headache Me, we kind of, in the preview show with Jake, we were kind of saying he might come in there as one of the favorites, but he really needs to get, some good performances together, and it looks like he started well, so that's a good start for him.
Yeah, exactly. Zepkius wasn't able to practice much, I think, in the last couple of weeks. I hope that he will, over the course of the season, he will basically find his old strength again and come back. So.
Yeah, and there's also just that thing where in some seasons, if you have a bad start, you just kind of write the season off, and you're in that situation where you probably won't get promoted anymore, but still got to put in the effort to at least avoid the relegation, and then you can have another go next season. Just relegation is a real setback if you're trying to get any higher, because it basically guarantees you that you're not going to get to Division 3 for at least one more season that you're going to have to spend getting back promoted again. Yeah, pretty
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty weak performance there from Sotomo. I don't know what exactly went wrong for him, but 9,000 points basically means he found at most one location and maybe got sort of close on one more. So yeah, definitely not a good round for him. And yeah, Denny J just seems like a general trend in Division 4 for the newcomers. Not a great performance from him either. So we'll have to take or keep an eye on him and Jean Harrison in the other division as well to see how they'll do over the course of the season. Week
Yeah.
1 on the table, just yeah, pretty standard there. The two Frenchmen at the top, the two Germans relatively far behind at the moment, but yeah, that can still change over the course of
Yeah.
the season.
Right. I'm also interested in seeing what Yemini will do because last season he played quite well. Um, and we're gonna see if he'll keep it up basically.
Yeah, it was not too far away from promotion spots. Basically tied with
Yeah.
Nakuro in third place. Just
Yeah.
lost out on. I don't remember if last season was already total score or still score difference as the tiebreaker. He was behind on both of them by a little bit, but
Right.
yeah, definitely gotta be. While a firework is going off outside of my window or something like that, definitely got to be one of the favorites for promotion. So not the best side for him, but let's look at his and the other guys' matchups for week 2. And yeah, he's going up against the leader now in Hexalt, so not going to be much easier for him, and not for Sepkirst either, who's going to go up against
Yeah.
Lunacy.
Yes, exactly. And then Zotomo really probably needs to win this against Hidigmi to have some hope in the relegation fight. I think he has avoided relegation for a while now, right?
Yep.
And I think he will have to do well on this kind of game to yeah to be able to stay up again.
Yeah, might be geographically the closest to Bhutan out of all of our players. So maybe that gives him a
Fair
little
enough.
bit of an advantage. Probably not. But
Yeah.
yeah, also very, very difficult matchups for the two Brits there in Wakelock and Denny J, who have to go up against Xander and Karp. Wakelock with a very good start to his season. He's got 3 points in week 1. He's only missing 5 to his last season's performance. 1 week in. But yeah,
Yeah.
Wakelock is kind of the player who's weirdly good in some weeks, and then most other weeks he's just pretty far behind. And we'll see what kind of form we get out of him in Bhutan. But doesn't strike me as the kind of map where he'd usually do very well. So we'll see.
Yeah, true.
All right, then let's move on to Division 3, where we have the standard yellow card for Freckles in week 1, as is tradition.
Yeah.
Only actually happened once before last season, although it feels like it's happening every season. Yeah, I just didn't think about playing, just, somehow put it to the back of his mind and forgot, which is unfortunate. He has to be very careful now to not pick up another yellow card, but he managed to get through the season last season as well without a second one, so we'll see. But yeah, some other very close games here too. Closed against Pastek, just 51 points, splitting the two of them apart. Still the snick
Yeah.
against Paulinho as well, just about too far behind, 119 points. Lost there for Paulinho, which is also unfortunate. And you there with a relatively easy matchup.
Yes, so that's I think it was an easy round in the first place, or an easy seed, I would say. Actually quite clearly 25K-able, but everybody choked on at least one round, it seemed. I choked on the last round and just got bailed out by Flipster, who I think he's driving a motorcycle through Nicaragua at the moment, so he's not. So he played on his mobile phone, I think.
Yeah,
That's lucky, of course, because he's also it's lucky for me because he's also a very very strong opponent, and I can start the season with a win.
yeah, a good one to get out of the way. And yeah, kind of lucky, mostly in the sense that you did have the second worst score there. So any other matchup except against Freckles with his yellow card would have ended up with a loss for you. And
Exactly.
Yeah, so also just probably the most important part is that you now don't have to play Flipster by the time he's back with somewhat stable internet, which,
While others will have to play him, and
yep,
and he will try to come back.
yeah,
Absolutely.
might come in handy to not have to play against him in that state. And yeah, relatively, for the first time here, actually, a relatively good start for the newcomers, for pretty much all newcomers here. I mean, Tante, unfortunately, against Anton Pilot, the other newcomer, ending up with a loss there, but a pretty decent score still, even if it's not quite enough for a bonus point. But
Yeah.
24.2k is nothing to be scoffed at. And Geofogger and the aforementioned Anton Pilot picking up their first wins here, which is quite nice for them and puts them into first and second place in the division. And yeah, you're still right in the promotion battle there in fifth. What do you think about your chances this season? Do you think you can fight for that promotion spot?
We'll see. It's a lot of good players. I think I will definitely fight for it, but at the same time, yeah, there are many good players here. Even among those that didn't actually win their first game, right? Flipster, we talked about, but Nakiro as well. And then Closed and Pastek Ashe, I think, had the best games, right? But they drew, and they both just sort of whiffed on the last round and missed out on a 5K due to that. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, all of them are very strong. Oh no, Steel the Snake had the best score, right? Yes,
Anton Pilot was the one with the best
Anton.
score in first place there.
All right, yeah, no, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, they did have the second and third best score. Very good performances from them. Pastek specifically, I watched his video. He specifically said he's probably not going to be practicing too much, unfortunately. But yeah, at least it's a better start than his last season, which didn't really go very well, where he ended up in essentially what was last place, but because of 2 red cards, still allowed him to play the relegation matchup, and he did win that against Seppo. So stayed in there
Oh yeah,
by by a hair's
last
width.
ditch effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um. So we'll see if he can get some better performances this season, and yeah, definitely an interesting division though. Probably out of all of the ones, the one where you've got the least clear like relegation battle, because in most other divisions you have like 1 or 2 players where like, okay, they might be struggling a bit, but in this season I don't really see anyone who, can't be at least fighting for one of the better places if they get
Yeah,
good performances together.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, then let's take a look at who they gotta get those performances together next week. And yeah, some interesting matchups. Antoine Pilot getting both of the newcomers out right away against Geofogger this week. And yeah, you against Nakuro. What do you think about that?
Hard matchup that I know from last season in Division 4. So yeah, definitely gonna be difficult. I like playing Bhutan, as I said before, so maybe that helps me. But who really knows?
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, and then we're gonna see if Flipster can actually sit down and play well this time against Pastek. That's gonna be difficult. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting to see, certainly.
Yeah, I do think that probably Bhutan is much more favored to a kind of not necessarily no move style, but to bad internet where you might not have to move around too much because you can just practice landscapes and specific highways and stuff like that, and can get pretty good
Sure.
at that. There, you can always get unfortunate and just end up on a road that's not that easy to identify, but probably much more favored to that kind of play style than Finland was. And yeah, I do think the from what I've heard from the French community, I'm just kind of putting an umbrella over all of them right now, but most of them seem to like Bhutan, so probably not an easy
Oh,
matchup
okay.
for both you and Flipster there, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting for sure. I think Hugo closed also a very interesting matchup. Both of them were struggling a
Yeah.
bit last season compared to, where they usually place. I mean, points wise they weren't far off, but 7th and 8th place for them. And we'll see
Mhm.
we'll see how Freckles does in his start to the season as well.
Yeah, it's coming back. And then like Geofogger and Antoine, who both played very well in Finland, right, are playing each other
Yeah,
now. So that's going to be
definitely.
interesting to see as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now then, let's take a look at Division 2. And compared to Freckles, who, explained himself and why he missed last week's game. I have no idea why Armand didn't play it. I sent him a message to remind him to play, and he just didn't play and never responded. So I don't know. We'll have to see if he does appear next week, but might be a dropout there, an early one, but probably would have had a difficult time against Ortbocker's 24.9k anyway. But going into the season, probably Armand was maybe even the favorite for this division, or at least one of the favorites. He had an incredibly
Yeah.
strong season in Division 3 last season. So would be unfortunate to see him drop out. But, you can't force anyone to play. Looking at the other scores, Division 2 also seemed to be a relatively easy seed. Max, of course, in his home country. He'll be glad that one paid off. Bit unfortunate, 2 points away from the perfect game.
Yeah.
And also,
I think it was like a long
yeah,
curve where you didn't pinpoint well, which that can happen, but yeah,
a bit
very close.
unfortunate. And newcomers also doing pretty well here. Stock, I mean, against Guelo's score here, not too much of a challenge for him, but Samo T and Aston also with very, very good scores, and a draw for the both of them to take away there.
And then Verdok against Renata, also a draw, and both of them with really good scores. Renata had sort of also dropped out towards the end of last season, right? So I was happy to see that she's back and playing really well, and getting a draw against Verdok, who I think is also one of the possible favorites, right, in Division 2.
Yeah, Renata did have that one yellow card somewhere in the middle of last season, and then made it still, even with that, to the playoff, but then just didn't play the playoff. So, could have been in
Exactly,
Division
yeah.
1 at this point. But yeah, ending up back here in Division 2. Good start for her for sure. And Verduk, as always, as you can expect from him, 24.99. He's definitely one of the favorites as well. He has his weak maps occasionally. I think Bhutan might also be a map that isn't really the type of map that he's usually good at. So we'll have to see who he plays against next week. But a good start for him for sure. And yeah, Bubat, not really with the greatest performance there. I haven't looked at whether that was just one round or whether he's just generally struggled a bit with that seed. Give me 1 second. I have to scroll down a bit. But it was mostly one round, yeah. So maybe just a one-off, maybe chose the wrong direction multiple times and just didn't really have a good time in that one round. But yeah, apart from that, a decent game from him as well. So we might be able to expect him to come back from that next week.
Yeah.
So the table, yeah, as we saw there, not unexpected. Max at the top with his home country always gives you a little bit of an advantage. Mostly bonus points there for Verdok, Renata, and Samo. Just Aston a bit unlucky. 17 points behind, and Satomi put in the wrong total score for Samo. Not a big issue there, but yeah, looking rough for the two Americans here with Cameron and Guelo. Not the best scores there in week 1.
Oh,
yeah. But yeah, this is another very interesting division where I can see like at least 7 or 8 different people who could potentially get promoted, which puts us in a difficult position for people like Guelo, who struggled in Finland there pretty badly, and also was already kind of half relegated, and meant that a rule that I think we put into effect at the end of season 2, and it was activated the first time between Season 5 and Season 6, where if you lose your relegation matchup, but the person you lost it against doesn't continue playing into next season, you actually stay up yourself. So Guelo, even if he lost his relegation match against LCN last season because LCN couldn't keep playing, he did manage to stay in Division 2, but maybe not for the better in this scenario. He'll have to fight hard for any point at all here. But if Armand drops out, then maybe he is in with another chance of staying up. Only needs to get one more person behind him to have a go at the relegation playoff game at least.
All right. We're gonna see what happens with Armand, right? You said he hasn't talked to you at all, and if he doesn't play much, then it opens up something at the top, obviously.
That's definitely true as well. Opens up a spot for the promotion fight that people didn't think was there because he was already kind of booked for that place. And so we might see a little bit of a surprise there. I mean, Verdok always kind of a favorite for that promotion spot out of Division 2. Renata, as well as she played last season, if she manages to play all the weeks, also kind of a clear favorite. And then you've got a lot of people who, even just last season, you wouldn't have expected to be in that fight for promotion into Division 1. I mean, Max had some decent to good seasons. I think it's his third season in Division 2 now. But he's been mostly mid-table, and Orboka and WTF also kind of sharing that sort of more mid-table to lower mid-table position. So might be in for a chance there for a bit of a surprise promotion, perhaps.
Yeah.
And they're going to be playing their matchups next week against these people. And we've got an interesting French derby there in Eastin against Verdok, which I think could be a very interesting one, both with very good performances in Finland. And as I said, though, Verdok maybe not the best map for him. So I could definitely see Eastin in there with a chance. And newcomer matchup there as well, Stock against Samo, could also be interesting. Stock with a win in week 1, but maybe not the best score. I think he had maybe out of those 12, maybe the 8th or 9th best score. Anything else? Anything you looking forward to seeing here?
We're gonna see if Armand shows up, right? And if he does, we'll know more. Then, I think Renata and maybe also Max are favorites in their matchups, right?
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. Yeah. Again, with Bhutan, always depends a bit on how much people practice, but just from what we know of them, probably the favorites for those matchups for sure. And Bhutan against Guelo as well, with 10th against 11th there. Also kind of already a pretty important game for the both of them. All right, then. Oh, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. Then let's move on to Division 1, where, well,
let's familiar name.
Let's not look at that score. Let's just skip over that. Just kind of a bit of an unfortunate situation there where the seed had one round that was kind of in a... I don't even know if that still counts as a suburb to Tampere because it's pretty far out there. But essentially all I found on the whole round was just like a sign pointing both towards Tampere and Vasa on the E12 in, opposite directions. And I found absolutely nothing else except for that the street name that we were on was called Vanya Vasantie. And I thought, Vasa is in the street name. I mean, it's not like I have anything else to go off. Yeah. And unfortunate there. If I'd spent a bit more time actually thinking about what I'm doing, I might have recognized that, Vasa doesn't really have much.
It was in Tampere, right?
Yeah, it was close to Tampere. Okay. And maybe I should have looked more at kind of the road angle of the highway. And, maybe also figured that there's not much in the way of suburbs in Vasa that, it could have been. So just a bit, unfortunate there. Just tunnel vision on that, I suppose. And probably worst part about that is if I would have just plonked it in Tampere, I would have likely won that game because Shumi also dropped, comparatively to the other people in Division 1, quite a few points. in that game in round 2, which was a different one. So yeah, unfortunate, but yeah, I just gotta come back from it. And other than that, some pretty high scores there. It wasn't the most difficult seed. And yeah, Barry as a promoted player, first game in Division 1, first perfect score. Very nice performance from him there.
Yeah. Congrats. And then, I mean, Pluki and Mr. Blue, very close matchup, right? Very close.
Yeah, that
and both
was
of them playing very well.
that was a crazy close match, and you can look forward to that in the cast because we did cast that, and it is a very interesting matchup to watch for sure. So yeah, you can look forward to that. Probably will be the first matchup of this week to go live, probably a day or two after this show goes up. Anything about the other games?
No, I think I think that's it. It wasn't such a difficult seed, I would say, and that's reflected in a lot of pretty high scores. But
Yeah,
we're gonna see how the season shakes out.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at how it shakes out in week 1. With Barry, obviously, with his perfect score, smiling from the top of the table. But yeah, we've talked about this division in the previous show and said how this is a division which has the potential to be extremely close. I think pretty much all of the players in this division can play at a level that is similar to each other, a very high level. And yeah, pretty much out of those 10 players, there's like 10 players who could make playoffs or get relegated. It's totally open in the air. I think probably Pluki may be my personal favorite, purely based on, he was in the semifinals last season, so he has already felt what that's like, and maybe, it's also an interesting thing about how I don't know how much pressure some of these players will have, because with Boxer, Raidman, and Orpheus now gone, it opens up a lot of room, and maybe some players will feel like this has to be their season where they get into those playoffs, and if they get too nervous or too ahead of themselves, they might
backfire.
drop. Yeah, it can backfire for sure, and might drop more points here or there, have some bad rounds. And mentality and confidence is a very important part of Geoguessr. So if that goes wrong early on, then we might see some surprises here or there. So let's take a look at the fixtures for week 2. And yeah, some interesting games there. My 5th game in Reddit League against Baseman. I've been in the same division ever since season 2. And it's currently 1 win for me, 2 wins for him, and 1 draw. So we'll see how this week turns out. Probably, I haven't checked actually, but it might be the matchup that's been played the most in Reddit League history. Could be an interesting stat to check for. But some other interesting games too. I think Mr. Blue Nimrith is a very interesting game. Both losing their first game, even though I think both
closely, right?
Yeah, both with close losses. And I think both of them are definitely, like I said, Pluki before. I think if I had to name more players, like Mr. Blue and Nimrith would probably be the first ones that come to mind as other favorites for those playoff places. And yeah, apart from that, also Bastel against Mason, 2 newcomers playing against each other, and French Derby as well, and Totorado and Pluki. What do you think about the games?
Maybe we'll see how Barry will do on the second match after starting off so very well in the first one as a promoted player. So
assuming probably
going to be interesting to see.
Probably not with another 25k. I'd be surprised.
Well, it's Bhutan. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and we've mentioned it once before, and we just mentioned it again. So let's just talk about it. We've got Bhutan here, a polygonal map created by Pastetli, which does use though like the kind of, I don't know how it works exactly, but it's pretty much just the good Bhutan coverage. There's no unofficial coverage in there. I had one while practicing and creating seeds. I had one location that actually had like unofficial coverage, but it's a pretty decent map. And Yeah, plenty of locations. I think Pustetli, I actually talked to him yesterday, and he said it's like 9,000 something locations, just under that mark before it gets like into 10K plus on the Geoguessr page. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, a very, very interesting country for sure. Any comments on Bhutan from you?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that kind of map because, well, it's a super beautiful country, and you can actually use the landscape quite a bit to guess where you are, right? If you recognize a certain river or something like that, or if you recognize the foggy southern parts and that sort of thing, you can use that quite a lot. But then pinpointing can be difficult, obviously, because sometimes you'll have to count curves just to pinpoint yourself. But yes, I like practicing it very much, and uh, I generally like a map where you can where the country isn't fully covered, and in the end, there's basically a couple dozen locations that show up, uh, or a couple dozen highways basically, which show up repeatedly. So I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, it's basically like while I was practicing at it as well. Because before practicing it, I didn't really have any strong feelings about Bhutan. It doesn't really show up that often if you just play normal tournaments, play world maps. And even if it does, most of the time you're probably not gonna get too much out of playing it if you're just playing the odd round here or there, because by the time you'll
Yeah,
see it again, you'll have forgotten all about it. And
exactly.
the real nice part about Bhutan is, as you said, trying to recognize landscapes, trying to recognize certain areas, maybe even going it too far as to recognizing certain parts of the road. And
Yeah,
yeah, that only comes in when you
certain
actually play.
castles that you see sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah, that
exactly.
only comes in when you play a lot of it back to back. And yeah, you can definitely learn most of the country. And I'd say about 95% of it is just national highways. There are quite a few still roads that just lead off the national highways just for about like maybe 1, 2, 3 kilometers up into the
Yeah,
mountains. Probably can't really have too much longer roads going up there into the mountains anyway, but they do appear occasionally. I think most of the time, if you've got 3, 4 minutes, you can probably make your way to a main highway if you don't get unlucky and go in the wrong direction or stuff like that. But there's definitely a lot of areas which I think stand out a lot. There's also some highways that just look, like any other highway. Maybe it just takes more practice, but yeah. And I've also noticed like a massively varying amounts of mile markers depending on what part of the road you're on. It's on some roads you see them pretty much every kilometer all the time, and some roads you just go 5, 6 kilometers and there's none there, or they're just completely blank because who needs information? Um,
yeah. And sometimes they tell you basically you're 50 kilometers from Thimphu and then you're good. Sometimes they tell you nothing, or they tell you like a small village that you have no chance of finding on the map because it's
yeah,
also spelled differently on the map
yeah,
and all
and
that. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, probably
That's
unique.
interesting.
Probably unique in that sense is Bhutan, where there's just a lot of villages that do not show up on the map at all. Like,
Yeah,
if you zoom in, you'll see sometimes, or quite often actually, you'll see PYs which mention the village's name, but it doesn't show up as a village name on Bhutan's map. So probably also a factor that really comes into play, just where practice is so important, just recognizing these small towns that you probably, if you're looking throughout all of Bhutan, you're just not going to find them. But if you've heard of them before, and there's not too many that you have to remember, in most places there's a couple that show up quite often, and
right.
you're going to have a big advantage if you just know where they are, because yeah, oftentimes that is the only information you'll get. uh,
Yes, well, sometimes you see the district name as well on a
yeah,
sign, right?
true.
Like the
Yeah,
shop signs often have not just the village, but also the Zhongkang or whatever it's called, the district.
Yeah, and
those are useful, obviously.
yeah, and thankfully those are also usually named after the biggest city in the district. So you don't really have to learn their names because they're pretty apparent anyway. You just have to make sure you know where the cities are.
Yeah.
Well, all right then. So that was our Reddit League show for week 1. Thanks everyone for watching. There's gonna be 3 matchups, I think, that will be casted over the course of the next week. And yeah, we hope you've enjoyed watching. Thanks for doing so, and we'll see you guys again next time. Until then, bye.
Bye.